The night Emily Carter broke did not arrive with warning. It crashed into her life quietly, like a crack spreading through glass, invisible until it was too late to stop. If someone had been watching from the outside, they would have missed it completely. The house was calm. The neighborhood was calm. Everything looked normal. That was the lie. Emily stood alone in the kitchen of her New England home, one hand resting on the counter, the other holding a glass she had already cleaned twice. The clock on the wall ticked too loudly. Outside, a light rain tapped against the window, blurring the streetlights into soft yellow shapes. She stared at her reflection in the dark glass and barely recognized the woman looking back. Her face was tired. Her eyes held something heavy she could no longer carry. For years, Emily had been known as steady, reliable, the kind of woman people trusted. Friends called her strong. Family said she handled everything with grace. Even her husband, Daniel, often told others how lucky he was to have a wife who never complained, and that was exactly the problem she had learned. Slowly and without noticing, how to stay quiet, how to smooth over disappointment, how to swallow words before they reached her lips. She told herself this was what adulthood looked like. Marriage, responsibility, calm. But calm can turn into silence, and silence can turn into loneliness. That evening had been ordinary. Dinner dishes were done. The TV hummed faintly in the living room. Daniel had been answering emails on his phone, his face lit by the screen. Emily had stood up and walked into the kitchen, telling herself she just needed a moment alone. Now that moment had grown too big. Her chest felt tight, like the air had thickened around her. She took a slow breath, then another. It didn't help. The pressure stayed. The thoughts she had pushed down for years began to rise all at once. When was the last time he really looked at me? When was the last time I felt wanted, not just appreciated? When did I start feeling like a guest in my own life? Her grip tightened on the glass without her noticing. Her hand shook slightly. A tear slid down her cheek, surprising her. She wiped it away quickly, annoyed with herself. "Get it together," she whispered. That was when Daniel stepped into the doorway. He had followed her to ask if she had seen his charger. A small thing, a forgettable question. But the moment he saw her back, her rigid shoulders, the way she stood frozen at the sink, he stopped. "Emily," he said softly. The sound of his voice was enough. Something inside her gave way. Her fingers loosened. The glass slipped from her hand and shattered against the metal sink, the sharp sound slicing through the quiet house. Emily gasped, more from the release than the noise. Her breath hitched, and before she could stop herself, tears rushed out, fast and uncontrolled. Daniel rushed forward. "Hey, are you okay?" She shook her head, once. Then again. "I can't," she said, her voice barely holding together. "I can't do this anymore." The words hung in the air between them. Daniel froze. In 12 years of marriage, he had never heard those words from her. Never in that tone. This wasn't frustration. It wasn't anger. It was exhaustion. "Do what?" he asked carefully. Emily stared at the broken glass, her reflection fractured into pieces. Her knees felt weak. She slowly lowered herself to the floor, her back sliding against the cabinet until she was sitting, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to stay in one piece. "This," she said, "all of it. Pretending I'm fine when I'm not. Pretending this distance doesn't hurt." Daniel knelt in front of her, unsure, his heart pounding. He wanted to fix it immediately, say the right thing, make it better. But he could see in her face that this wasn't something that could be solved in one sentence. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. She laughed quietly, a sound full of sadness. "Because I didn't know how without breaking down. And because I didn't want to be a burden." That word hit him hard. "You're not a burden," he said quickly. Emily finally looked at him. Her eyes were red, but clear, honest in a way he hadn't seen in a long time. "I know you don't mean to," she said. "But somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling like your partner. I started feeling like background noise." Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. He searched his memory for moments he might have missed, conversations he had half listened to, nights he had chosen work, or his phone, or sleep, instead of her. "I thought we were okay," he said quietly. "That's the scariest part," Emily replied. "I told myself the same thing." She pressed her forehead against her knees, her voice muffled. "I kept waiting for things to change, for us to find our way back. But the longer I waited, the more invisible I felt." Daniel sat back on his heels, stunned. He had known things were quieter between them, but he had thought that was normal, comfortable. He hadn't realized how loud that silence had been for her. "I should have seen this," he said. Emily shook her head. "I should have spoken sooner." They sat there on the kitchen floor, surrounded by broken glass and unspoken truth. The house that had once felt safe now felt fragile, like one wrong move could bring it all down. Daniel reached out slowly and placed his hand near hers, giving her space to pull away if she wanted. She didn't. Her fingers curled slightly, resting against his. "I don't want to lose us," he said. Emily's throat tightened. "Neither do I, but I can't keep disappearing to save what we used to be." The rain outside grew heavier, tapping against the windows like a reminder that time was moving forward, whether they were ready or not. For the first time in years, Emily felt exposed, raw, but she also felt lighter, like something heavy had finally been set down. There was fear in that feeling, but also relief. Daniel realized then that the woman in front of him was not falling apart. She was telling the truth, and once the truth was spoken, there was no going back to pretending what neither of them knew yet was whether this moment would be the beginning of of healing, or the moment they finally admitted how far apart they had drifted. The night was far from over. Emily woke up to the sound of rain still tapping softly against the windows. The house was quiet in a way that made her chest ache and her thoughts race. She had spent the night on the couch, the emptiness of the bedroom beside her a strange comfort. Daniel hadn't said much after the kitchen incident, only letting her be, letting her process. But now, morning had arrived, bringing with it a different kind of tension, one filled with questions neither of them had answers for yet. She wrapped her arms around herself, staring at the ceiling as memories of the night replayed in her mind. For the first time in years, she had let herself break, allowed her walls to crumble in front of him. That act of vulnerability, which had terrified her for so long, now felt like a fragile thread connecting them in a way that nothing else ever had. And yet she felt exposed, wondering if Daniel would pull away or if he would stay and meet her there when she finally went downstairs. She found him in the living room, sitting at the edge of the sofa with 2 mugs of coffee. His expression was unreadable, careful, but she sensed the storm of emotions beneath the calm surface. He didn't ask questions or lecture her. He didn't offer solutions. He simply handed her a mug and waited. That small gesture carried more meaning than words ever could. Emily took the coffee and sat across from him, the warmth of the mug grounding her. She realized she had spent too long hiding her feelings, pretending that quiet endurance was enough. But this raw honesty was something new, something dangerous, yet essential. She had to speak, and he had to listen. She took a deep breath and let the words tumble out. "I felt invisible," she began, her voice steady now, but heavy with truth. "Not unloved, but unseen. Like I was just existing beside you rather than being part of something alive. I missed being wanted, Daniel. Not just appreciated, not just noticed when convenient. I missed being truly seen." Daniel's hand twitched slightly, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the mug. He searched her face, seeing the honesty there and feeling the weight of his own neglect. I had no idea," he said quietly. "I thought things were fine. I thought we were okay." Emily shook her head slowly. "That's just it. We were okay because we didn't fight, because we avoided the hard stuff. But okay isn't enough. Not for me. Not for us." She paused, letting her words sink into the quiet room. "I stayed silent because I didn't want to ruin the calm. I didn't want to burden you with my feelings, but staying quiet, it almost destroyed me." Daniel swallowed hard. The guilt hit him like a physical weight, pressing against his chest. He realized that he had mistaken absence of conflict for peace. He had missed the subtle signs, the small moments of longing in her eyes. The nights she lay awake beside him, wishing for connection. He had believed everything was fine because it wasn't loud enough to demand attention. "I'm so sorry, Emily," he whispered. "I never wanted you to feel like that. I didn't see. I wasn't paying attention the way I should have." Her hand brushed against his across the small table, a tentative connection. "It's not just on you," she said. "I should have spoken up sooner. I should have let you in before it got this bad. But I thought I could handle it alone, and I was wrong." They sat there in silence for a few minutes, each lost in their own thoughts. Outside, the rain continued, steady and calming, a reminder that life moved forward even when it felt impossible to catch up. Finally, Daniel reached across and took her hand fully in his, holding it without forcing anything. This time, she didn't pull away. "I don't want to lose you," he said, voice firm but gentle. "And I don't want you to disappear either. We need to be in this together, fully, without pretending anymore." Emily felt a lump in her throat, a mix of relief and fear. "I don't know how to do this," she admitted. "I don't know if I can just jump back into what we had before." Daniel nodded. "No, we don't jump back. We build forward, slowly, together." That morning, they took the first steps toward rebuilding something they hadn't realized was fractured. They walked together, first silently, letting the rhythm of their footsteps fill the space between them. Then, as the sun broke through the clouds, they began to talk not about schedules, bills, or responsibilities, but about memories, small dreams, and the things they had longed for but never shared. Emily spoke of the loneliness she had felt in moments she thought Daniel would never notice. She spoke of wanting to be appreciated not just for what she did, but for who she was. She spoke of fears of quiet heartbreaks and small joys that had been buried under the weight of routine. Daniel listened, truly listened, offering his own reflections, his own vulnerabilities. For the first time in a long while, they were equals in their honesty. As the days passed, the pattern continued. They didn't solve everything at once. Some nights were still quiet. Some days carried the heaviness of the past weeks. But every conversation, every walk, every small gesture of attention became a thread mending what had been broken. Emily began to feel seen. Daniel began to understand the power of presence, and slowly, a fragile sense of connection grew stronger. Emily realized that shattering had not meant the end of her marriage. It had meant the beginning of real intimacy, the kind that could only exist when masks are removed, when truths are spoken, when fear is faced together. She understood that love wasn't about perfection, but about attention, honesty, and persistence. Daniel discovered the same truth. Love was not merely about showing up. It was about noticing, responding, and embracing the vulnerability that comes with truly seeing someone. He understood that strength was not in holding back emotions, but in engaging with them fully, even when it was uncomfortable. One evening, as the sun dipped low and the house was bathed in a warm, golden light, Emily and Daniel sat on the porch with coffee in hand, talking quietly. Laughter came more easily now. Smiles came more freely. There was a softness in their eyes, a gentle recognition of the fragility and beauty of the journey they were on. Emily rested her head on Daniel's shoulder, feeling the rise and fall of his chest. The house, the street, the rain-soaked trees, they all felt different. Not perfect, not untouched by struggle, but alive, honest, and theirs. She realized that this moment, this quiet peace, was not the absence of pain, but the presence of understanding. They knew challenges lay ahead. There would be days of doubt, moments of frustration, and perhaps times when old habits crept back. But the difference now was undeniable. They had faced the breaking point, spoken the truth, and chosen to meet each other fully. And in that choice, they had found a new kind of closeness. One that was resilient, tender, and profoundly real. Emily thought of the shattered glass from that first night. It no longer symbolized weakness or failure. It symbolized release, honesty, and the courage to be seen. And Daniel knew As he held her hand and felt her lean into him, that love, when nurtured with attention and vulnerability, could survive anything, even the quiet cracks that once threatened to pull them apart. By the time night fell again, they were still holding on to each other, not as the people they had been before, but as two souls learning how to navigate the truth together. Their story was far from perfect, but it was theirs, honest, and to leave a reminder that being truly seen could heal even the deepest wounds, and that love, when faced without pretense, could be stronger than anything that once tried to break it. In the end, Emily realized that shattering wasn't failure. It was the start of connection. And Daniel understood that love wasn't just about staying, it was about noticing, listening, and showing up day after day, even when the work was hard. And together, they moved forward slowly, carefully, with hearts open and eyes wide, ready to rebuild what had always been worth saving.